In this lesson, we're going to go over entering information into Excel 2013. When you enter any sort of data into Excel, you'll enter it into a spreadsheet. Of course, entering information is as simple as clicking on a cell in the spreadsheet and typing. But there are some things to know that are helpful. The first thing you want to do before you type anything into Excel is to spend a little time planning the spreadsheet. If you go right into Excel without an idea of your vision for what you're looking for, just typing in numbers may not be the most effective way to get the most out of your spreadsheet. You don't need a full plan to enter the spreadsheet, but you have to have an idea of what you're looking for, some visualization of how you want to view the data that you're going to put into Excel. For that reason, and this will become automatic as you start to use Excel more and more often, you'll want to first determine what is the point of the spreadsheet. Then you want to determine what information do you need to include in the spreadsheet. Next, you're going to want to figure out what headings you are going to use to explain this information in the spreadsheet. And lastly, you want to have an idea if you're going to be using columns, rows, or both. So take a little time to plan your spreadsheet, and by doing this, you could probably save yourself a lot of headaches down the road. All right, before we start entering data into Excel, we're going to go over the three types of data. The three types of data in Excel are text, value, and formula. When we're talking about types of data, this is the data that you can enter into the cells of the worksheet. If Excel detects that the entry is a formula, it will calculate the formula and display the result in the cell. You can see the formula in the formula bar when the cell is active. Now, if it detects that what you're putting into the cell is not a formula, Excel then decides if it's text or value. Generally speaking, text entries are aligned to the left of the cell. Values are aligned to the right. This is all important to know so that you can make sure that you're entering things correctly and that Excel is interpreting these things correctly as you intended them to be. All right, we're going to open up our test workbook again. And let's just delete everything that we had previously. And let's just go ahead and name this sheet 1. Let's just go and remove these sheets. Just clean this up a little bit so we're kind of at a blank slate. All right, about text data. Text entries are simply bits of data that Excel can't classify as a formula or a value. Most text entries are labels, or the names of columns and rows. So if this was going to be a spreadsheet on a very simple spending of a household, we might have text data as the headers for the columns specifying the months. And then we might have, as rows, the items that we're expensing, such as groceries, gas, utilities, rent, maybe insurance, cable, phone, what have you. So these could be considered labels, and they could also, and these labels are essentially text data. Now notice that Excel aligned all of our text data here to the left. About values. Values are the building blocks of all formulas that you enter. Values are numbers that represent quantities, and they are numbers that represent dates. So dates and numbers are values, and they can be used in calculations and formulas. Values are aligned to the right of the cell. If Excel cannot solve the values you add as a formula, then it will assume that they are values. So let's say groceries for January, we spent $200. Now as soon as I hit enter, notice that Excel says, oh, this is a value, it's a number, and I'm aligning it to the right. Now let's say we spent $150 on gas, we spent $95 on utilities, rent we'll say was $800, insurance was $175, cable was $50, and the phone was $35. These are now all values, 200, 150, 95, and they've all aligned right to the cell. If you need to add a negative value, enter a minus sign before the value. You can also put it in parentheses if you want. Excel will convert it to a negative if you choose to do it either way. So let's say in February we did 300 in groceries, but we got some bonus gas credit on our rewards credit card, and instead we got $50 back in gas. So this is one way to enter negative. I'm going to hit enter and it turns into negative. Another way could be just to, we'll delete that. Another way to enter negative would be just to type in dash, which stands for negative dash 50. And that also reads it as negative 50. If you're entering a value that's a dollar amount, you can add dollar signs and commas just like you would if you were handwriting it. When you enter a dollar amount, so let's say utilities this month for February would be $117. So we want to specify specifically that this is a currency. We can do that, and it still aligns it. I don't know if you can tell, so let's widen the column a little bit. It still aligns it to the right and understands it as currency. Now you might be thinking, and not trying to jump ahead here, that these should all be considered currency, because they are, but it's really easy to change all of the information that you're seeing here to currency format. We just select everything here and we go under the numbers, under home, the number group, and we can tell them, oh, this is what do we want to do? We want to do currency, we want to do accounting, percentages and that sort of thing, but we're going to change it all to currency. If you don't like that, another way to do it is to switch over to accounting, and that puts the dollar sign to the left, which I do like, and puts the numbers to the right. If you need to add a decimal point, use the period key on your keyboard. So I think we demonstrated that already. Let's say rent was $815.35. Oh, and if you need to convert a fraction to a decimal, Excel will do that too. Let's say that the insurance premiums changed. It's now $2,000 a year, but we don't know what that would be for February. We could do, well, it's $2,000 a year. Oops, sorry, $2,000 a year. So that'd be 2,000 over 12 months. You hit enter. It immediately says, well, it will be 166 2/3 a month. But what we could do is we could, it's saying it's under the number group, it's saying it's a fraction, but we could change it over to accounting, and there it figured it out. And we could also switch it back to a fraction if you want. And when it's in fraction, notice that it displays it as a fraction. It is aligned to the right. Oh, one other thing. If you're entering simple fractions like 5/8 where the whole number isn't present, you should enter a 0 as the whole number. And the reason you do this is because Excel would interpret it as a date. So 5/8, Excel would think most likely you meant May 8th. We're going to talk about formulas in depth in this course. For now, however, it's important that you get a feel for formulas, what they are, and how they work. In Excel, a formula is simply an equation that performs a calculation. It can be as simple as 5 plus 2, or as complex as 3 plus 5 times 16 divided by 3 pi. You can perform calculations within a single cell, or based on the values of 2 different cells, a range of cells, or even a range of cells across several different worksheets. A formula must start with an equal sign, and that's how Excel knows that there's supposed to be a formula there. So let's go to column H, and we're just going to say, make this total. We want to add the data across this range of cells. Now there's many ways to do this, including the wonderful auto sum feature, but rather than to auto do this for you, let's show just how an equation would work. Normally we would do something like, B1, we would do something like B2 plus C2 plus D2, and we would go on, right? And as we're probably so used to grade school, is that then we say that equals something. But in Excel, it's the same concept. We're adding just like you would do any sort of simple arithmetic, but we're going to put the equal sign on the left. And then it knows it's a formula to calculate something. So let's just hit enter, and there we go. That's the formula, equal sign B2 plus C2 plus D2. Here's the formula. So a formula must start with an equal sign. This might seem strange at first, since ordinarily an equal sign comes at the end of an equation. But this lets Excel know right away that you want to perform a calculation. Whenever you want to add a formula to Excel, you always start with the equal sign. When you enter your formula into the cell, Excel will perform the calculation and display the answer in the cell immediately. However, when you click on the cell, the formula that you're using will appear in the formula bar, as we've seen here. There's the formula. Fixing decimal points. If you need to enter a bunch of numbers that use the exact same number of decimal places, you can use Excel's fixed decimal setting so that Excel automatically adds the decimal point for you. To do this, click on the File tab and go to the Backstage area. Then click Options on the left. So let's do that. Go to File, then click Options. Click on the Advanced. Go to Automatically Insert a Decimal Point and put it on a checkbox right here, and then we can select how many places we want. Now every time we enter a number, it'll automatically make it a decimal. However, we do not want to have that option enabled, so let's go to Advanced, and let's not do that. Entering dates. Dates and times are values in a worksheet, not text. Because they can be used for formulations, such as how many days an employee worked last month, Excel determines that you're entering a date or time by the way you type it in. These are just some of the ways you can type into Excel so that it recognizes it as a value. So let's start down here, and if we enter 5 a.m. and hit enter, it immediately thinks, oh, that's a time. If you do 5 p, it thinks that's a time. If you do 5:46 a.m., it thinks that's a time. If we want to do military time, we could do 17:46:12. Here are also some date formats you could use. You could enter May 1st, 2013, and it would enter it that way. You could do 5/1/2013, which would do it that way. It's still interpreting it as a date. You could do just May 1, and do 5/1, which ends up like that. Now, all of these are considered dates, and Excel is just trying to format it in a way that's similar to how you entered it, but still can figure out that it's a value. But if we don't like the way it's being displayed or formatted, we can go over to the number group here, and we can select what kind of date we want to use. We could give it a short date so that this will all change to short dates. Or we could say long dates. And the reason there's numbers, it's meaning that the data in here has run over to the next cell. So rather than to confuse us with wrong or impartially displayed numbers, it'll just say, no, you'll have to widen the column. There we go. So we could also do more number formats and be like, no, I like everything to be displayed this way. Okay, entering data into a worksheet. Now that we've covered some of the very basics of data, it's time to start actually entering information into Excel. Entering information is as easy as clicking on a cell. When you click on a cell, the cell will be highlighted with a green border as shown here. So I want to enter cell in utilities for April, which is right here. Utilities for April, I just click on it, there's a green border, and now I can start entering data. However, moving and clicking your mouse each time you want to change cells becomes time consuming. Most people who use Excel want to move a little faster than that and save as much time as possible. That said, you can also use the following keys to navigate the spreadsheet as you enter information. So as we enter numbers here for utilities, we'll say this was 125 for April. To go to the next cell beneath it, and I think we covered this before, we hit enter. The enter key enters the data in the current cell, then moves the cursor to the next cell in the same column. Tab key. Tab enters the data into the current cell, then moves one cell over in the same row. So here we're at rent for April, and we'll say that rent for April was 800, and now to go over to rent for May, the adjacent cell to the right, we would hit tab. Arrows. You can navigate through columns and rows in the spreadsheet using the arrows, and that's true. This is the up arrow, down arrow, left arrow, right arrow. And the escape cancels the current entry. That's actually really important. So let's say I'm making insurance for April here. I'm saying that's 178. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. Hit escape and everything erases. Labels are used for things such as titles, headings, names, and for identifying columns that contain data. These are text values. January, February, March, April, May, June, and even total here. These are headings and these are text labels. The text labels are aligned left, and Excel properly recognizes them as text values. Entering repeated labels. A method that you can use to quickly enter repeated labels is to use the pick list feature. All you have to do is right-click on any cell, then select Pick from List. It will provide a menu of all other entries and cells from that same column. So to use the Pick from List, we need to be in a column that has text data in it. And what we want to do is right-click on a column and select Pick from drop-down list, and it'll show everything that's in this column that are text values. This helps if you're repeating a lot of information and you have a long spreadsheet and you're like, oh, I don't want to type in groceries again, so let me just go pick from drop-down list and say groceries.